Hey everyone, welcome back to Daily Kaylee. I feel like I say this at the start of every episode, but I have had just a freaking crazy time recently with not only being busy with my everyday things that I have to do, but just random emergencies popping up here and there, and it has been difficult to say the least. But I am so glad to be releasing an episode today. I have been working on this episode for a while, and honestly, this episode has been a long time coming. Today's episode is about the Lillelid murders, and I first heard about the Lillelid family in high school. I was probably my freshman year of high school. I was in an introduction to criminal justice class, and my professor, or I guess my teacher, I wasn't in college obviously, my criminal justice teacher told us about this family that was murdered in a ditch in Tennessee. And I always thought it was so interesting. Not only because it was so close to home, but just the way it went down. The Lillelid family was murdered as the result of a carjacking, which is not anything special. However, their murderers were 6 teenagers. Let's start at the beginning. So, the Lillelid family consisted of 4 people. You had the father, who was Vidar Lillelid. Hope I'm saying that correctly. And he was 34. His wife, Delphina Lillelid, who was 28. Their daughter, Tabitha, who was 6. And their son, Peter, who was 2. And they were a part of the Jehovah's Witnesses. They lived in Greene County, Tennessee. And, they were your normal American family. They were very religious. They were just all around a nice family. You would not expect this to happen to them. On the day that they were murdered, they were stopping at a rest stop near Baileyton, Tennessee, which I'm sure if you're listening to this, you know where that is. On April 6th, 1997. They stopped at this rest stop on their way home from church, most likely. And when they got out of the car, they noticed 6 teenagers sitting at a picnic table in the parking lot around the rest stop that they were at. So, Vidar, the father, I hope I'm saying that correctly, I'm really not sure. He's from Norway, I believe, so I'm really not sure how to pronounce it. But anyways, him and his son Peter, he was carrying him because, like I said, he was 2 years old. They approached 2 of the young men that were part of the group of teenagers to discuss their religious views. Because, like I said, they were Jehovah's Witnesses. They were very religious. However, one of the older boys showed him a gun and told him they're going to have to take them so that they can steal their van. A little bit of background on the teenagers. They were all between the ages of 14 and 20. So I guess you could say they weren't all teenagers, but very young. And they were all from Pikeville, Kentucky. These teenagers consisted of Jason Bryant, Natasha Cornett, Dean Mullins, Joseph Risner, Crystal Sturgill, and Karen Howell. They were all traveling to New Orleans. And shortly after leaving Kentucky, they realized that Joseph's car is not going to make it to New Orleans. It's just a shitty little car. It's not going to make it. Apparently, they had discussed stealing a car from, a deserted parking lot or a dealership or something. And they had 2 guns. They had a 9mm and a 25 caliber pistol. Multiple eyewitnesses saw the 6 of them at this rest stop picnic table along I-81 outside of Baileyton. And a few of them passing by noticed that they were talking to the Lillelid family. So, after approaching them to talk about their religion, obviously they were like, great, I shouldn't have done that, I guess, because they were pretty much held hostage inside of their own van. Risner and Bryant, at gunpoint, forced the entire family into the van and forced Vidar to drive at gunpoint, basically. Vidar begged them to let his family go. He offered his wallet, his keys. He basically said, please, just take the van, take whatever you want, but just leave my family alone. We will stay here at the rest stop. But of course, they refused. In the van with the Lillelids were Risner, Bryant, Howell, and Cornett, and then Mullins and Sturgill followed behind in another car. Obviously, the children were confused and scared, so Delphina began to sing to them to calm them down, and she was ordered to stop at gunpoint. Risner made Vidar drive them to the first interstate, and then they got off at the next exit to a secluded road, which is known as Payne Hollow Lane, which is near Greenville. Once they got off the exit, they lined up the Lillelids up against the ditch in the road, and they shot all of them. After checking the bodies, Bryant said, "They're still fucking alive," and continued to shoot them again. The teenagers left all 4 bodies in the ditch and continued to go towards New Orleans in their van. However, they stopped at a Waffle House when they entered Georgia, and they noticed a group of police officers had arrived, so they left. After this, they were super freaked out. They decided to stop traveling towards New Orleans, and they instead wanted to go to Mexico to escape. When they reached the border, at first they were denied admittance because they did not have any forms of identification, but eventually they somehow found their way into the country. While they were there, they were stopped by the Mexican police, and they were claimed that they were lost. However, the officers searched the van, and when they searched the van, they found a knife, as well as a photo album that belonged to the Lillelid family. It was really suspicious and under really weird circumstances, so the Mexican police ordered them to go back to the border and re-enter the United States. And at the border, American patrol officers searched them and took them to a jail in Arizona. At the time of their arrest, it was 2 days after the murders, and several of the teenagers had personal items that belonged to the Lillelids, in their possession on their bodies. The autopsy report showed that both Vidar and Delphina had been shot multiple times. Vidar was shot 6 times. It is believed that he probably died within the first gunshot. However, Delphina was shot 8 times, and from the pattern of her bullet wounds, it's believed that she could have been alive but paralyzed for as long as 25 minutes before losing consciousness. After shooting her 8 times, they drove over her body with her van. Tabitha, the 6-year-old daughter, was shot once in the head, and she survived initially, but she was pronounced dead 1 day after the shooting. The shot to her head caused immediate brain death, so she was in a vegetative state until she died. Peter Lillelid, the 2-year-old, he was shot twice in the head. However, he actually survived both gunshots. He was transported to the intensive care unit at the University of Tennessee Memorial Hospital in Knoxville, and he was in critical condition. He was in really bad shape, and they almost didn't save him. 11 days after the shootings, they did surgery and removed his damaged eye. At this point, he remained in the hospital for 17 days for observation, and then he was transferred to a rehab center in Knoxville. But like I said, he survived. All 6 of the teenagers were from Kentucky. They all went to high school together except for one of them, and they all had troubled backgrounds. A few of them struggled academically and had extremely low IQs, and the others struggled with substance abuse. like I said, they all had troubled backgrounds. Many of them had already been arrested for violence or drugs. And the youngest boy was 14 years old. It is also believed that the 14-year-old boy conducted most of the shootings, which is the saddest part. They also, when they were conducting their investigation, found out that Jason Bryant, the 14-year-old boy, had a history of alcohol and drug abuse that started when he was as early as age 3. During the sentencing, Natasha Cornett said that her attorney had coached her to claim that she was the daughter of Satan and to play like a cult angle to this, and she spoke out about it in court, and they changed her attorney. However, after the trial was over, she tried to go back to that and claim insanity, because the prosecutor said that although he could only prove that Bryant had been a shooter, he felt that he would not be providing justice unless he convicted all 6 of them for murder. He also said he would be willing to do a plea deal to take the death penalty off the table, but they all had to agree to it, or it was void. Eventually, all of them did sign the plea deal, and they are all currently serving life sentences. All 6 of them were charged with 3 life sentences because of the 3 murders, and then 25 years each for the attempted murder of Peter Lillelid. They have no possibility of parole, even when they reach the age of 18 for the younger ones. They had absolutely no possibility of parole. For a little, I guess, a brighter ending to this story, I'll tell you what happened to Peter Lillelid. At the end of April of 1997, his medical condition was pretty much stable. There was a custody battle between his grandmother on his mother's side, who lived in Miami, Florida, and his aunt on his father's side, who lived in Sweden. His aunt in Sweden, her name was Randy, and she pledged that she would raise Peter in the teachings of the Jehovah's Witnesses, because that is what his family would have wanted. And ultimately, that's what won her custody. So, as far as I know, Peter is still living in Sweden. He was raised in the Stockholm area by his aunt and her family. And in 2007, he was about 12 years old, and he still had trouble walking because of his injuries. But other than that, he was living his life. In 2017, Peter had graduated with a degree in IT, and he was looking for work. And that's the last we've heard of him. So, at least some good came out of this for Peter Lillelid. Like I said, all 6 of these teenagers, well, they're no longer teenagers, but they're serving 3 life sentences. And I know it's really hard to, I don't know how to say this. I know that in a court of law, it is very hard to get a conviction of 6 teenagers like that, especially to put them away for life with no possibility of parole. I think in today's society it would be much harder, because from my experience and what I've seen, we are very lenient with minors, regardless of how competent they are. And I'm actually really proud that they were able to convict these 6 kids and stick with it. Anyways, that's the Lillelid family murders. I hope you enjoyed this episode. This family has always intrigued me, and I'm glad I got to talk about it. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.